Hey everyone, today I'm joined by JP Thor, the founder of ThorChain. He's a founder, investor, engineer, and an explorer. We're going to talk about some of the companies that he's built, some of the companies that he's working on, and some of his expeditions and explorations flying halfway across the world on a helicopter. Stay tuned. Welcome to Beyond the Code, the podcast where industry experts and brilliant legal minds discuss the impact of new emerging technologies. I'm your host, Yitzy Hammer, a lawyer and tech enthusiast. Join us as we explore the legal, regulatory, and ethical issues surrounding AI, blockchain, and more. Get ready to go beyond the code and stay ahead of the game. Hey, man. Thank you for joining me. I appreciate this. You're like really good at following up on things. Sometimes I meet people and we're like, let's get on a podcast episode. And then it's like back and forth scheduling for months until it finally happens. You're like straight into the point. I met you last Wednesday. Today is Monday and we're already on air. So very, very impressed with your Carpe Diem action.
Let's do it.
I'm very excited to have you here. You're really interesting guy. I love that you have your own website about you. So whoever put it together did a fantastic job. I want to like break down this episode into like the 4 tenets of who you are, I guess, like at least based on the website. Founder, engineer, explorer, and investor. And maybe just hear a little bit first about your background. I know you have from your website, military background as like a fighter pilot, and you clocked over 2,000 hours of airtime. So I'd love to hear a little bit about how you started out, I guess, and then how you got into crypto. And you have a really cool story building ThorChain without anybody knowing that you were building ThorChain. So I guess let's start from growing up and how you got into the military.
Yeah, sure. So grew up in rural Northern Territory, Northern Australia, from a place that most of the audience would never have heard of, a place called Darwin. And the actual place was Berry Springs, south of it. One of 10, one girl, 9 boys, homeschooled. Mum taught us from primary school right through to high school, and I finished the last few years of my high school distance education. So they would mail us the units, we would do it and mail it back in, and then we got a phone line, and we would have a teleconference once a week with our teachers, just make sure we're all synced up. We just got taught the basics, maths and English for homeschooling.
What about friends?
One of 10 kids, so there was 10 in 10 years. So
are you guys very
tight? Brothers were, yeah. One every year for 10 years.
Where are you in the mix?
Good. I'm third oldest, so elder brother, elder sister, and then there's me, the chaotic one.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. And then I was fascinated with flying from early ages. So I joined the Air Force to be a pilot, fighter pilot. What I wanted to do was, I was fascinated with, I wanted to be a fighter pilot, then a test pilot, then an astronaut. And I was kind of working my way back that to be an astronaut, you have to be a test pilot and then go through the US test pilot schools, et cetera. And to be a test pilot, you have to be a fighter pilot. And then to be a fighter pilot, you have to be, the best pilot you could possibly be in the Air Force. And I was too young at the time to join the Air Force as a pilot, so I did studied aeronautical engineering through the academy. And I switched to pilot. Did 10 years of that. I got all the way through fighter stream into the fighter squadron on training, and I was a brilliant pilot. I have to say so myself. I was always top.
If you do say so yourself.
No, well, I was always top in the class, winning the awards and getting. But they found me very. I wouldn't say erratic, but I was always pushing the limits.
Okay.
And one of my final flights in fighter school was I was using the radar when I shouldn't have been using the radar, and I was pulling these maneuvers that I shouldn't have been pulling. So when they pulled my tapes and they said, "Man, you're out of control. Go fly bombers for a bit, and then come back, do a tour of bombers around the world, and then we'll put you back in the seat, settle you down." I was young, high energy.
Yeah. How old were you?
Early 20s. and then switched to Bomber. Bombers, flew that for 3 years all around the world, and then did a lot of international stuff, night flying, South China Sea, some crazy stuff. And then I got really bored of it and really kind of disillusioned with the military organization. I'd done 10 years at that stage, 3 years at the academy from 16 to 19, then 3 years through fighter school, then 3 years through bomber command. So yeah, I was on my ninth, 10th year going, all right, I'm done. And I discovered crypto and Bitcoin and decided to go all in, resign from the Air Force and sell my house, sell my car, and go all in on crypto. Because
What, just like that?
what, just like that, a wise man once said to me, if you want to make money, you got to work with money. And when I met Bitcoin, discovered Bitcoin in 2013, I'm like, and this thing's going to change the world. I went in, so I bought a bit, watched it go up and down, craziness. So almost lost my Bitcoin get on BTC.com. It got hacked. I woke up one day and there's a big FBI logo over the top saying, this exchange has
Seized.
been seized.
Oh god.
Well, anyway. So in 2067, I set out to build a decentralized liquidity protocol.
Okay, well, you just kind of like went like, oh, I discovered Bitcoin, and then build my own decentralized exchange.
Nah, there's a bit of a loop. I was mucking around with Bitcoin wallets in the App Store,
Okay.
and Apple were banning Bitcoin wallets in the App Store. And then Ethereum came out in 2016. I was learning how to write smart contract code, and I won this hackathon, won a whole bunch of ETH. And then at that time, that was when I was resigning from the Air Force, and I decided to had like 5 crazy ideas on Ethereum to build. Built a couple of them, raised a bunch
Okay.
of money, but I realized that I was building at the wrong part of the stack. It was post mass adoption. We're building like a decentralized freelancer website.
hmm
So instead, I realized it was liquidity that was most important to build. So building for, yeah, basically just swap Bitcoin to ETH on chain is what I wanted to build.
So what do you start? What was your first product?
Well, I was in the Bangkok ICO in June 2017 and the Kyber ICO in September 2017 and the AirSwap ICO. And I was expecting these protocols to build decentralized liquidity.
hmm
Got to the end of 2017, Bangkok launches, but I'm very underwhelmed with Bangkok. It was like you had to be whitelisted. The math behind the reserve ratios were all out to lunch, and it was just way too complex. The UX was bad, etc. So I thought, man, what I need to do is build like Bangkok, but cross chain for like Bitcoin and ETH. And little did I know how hard that was going to be. First, we started building multi-sig solution, but multi-sig was never going to work. I had the wrong team as well. So the project was on pause for about 6 months. And but then I met my now co-founder for the protocol at a Berlin hackathon in June 2019. And I said, dude, we rocked up. He had no idea about blockchains that weekend, and we won the hackathon. Basically, we built ThorChain. It was called InstaSwap using these liquidity formulas, and called it InstaSwap. And I was like, dude, I've already got this half-baked idea I've been building for the last 12 months. Here's like the white paper, the GitHub, everything. The social media accounts all been a year old by that stage. And I've still got like 30 grand in the treasury from the original investors and myself. So let's go and build it. And he was like, let's do it. So yeah, we
And that's how
restarted the
ThorChain was
project.
born.
Yeah.
And it was called ThorChain from day one.
A year prior, when we started the project, it was actually called Thor Blocks.
Okay.
And then, well, yeah. And then I realized that uh, these communities are orientated around a culture, around
hmm
mimetic energy. Because a few years prior on BTC, everyone was trading like Bitcoin forks, Peercoin, Litecoin, Feathercoin, Namecoin, Grossercoin, Primecoin,
Yeah.
whatever, right? They're all forks of Bitcoin. And they're trying to create communities and cults around them. And they weren't very successful doing that. And I realized that the best projects were really successful at creating like a cult, a meme around it. And the oldest meme of them all actually is Norse mythology. The oldest, richest meme, I think, would have to be Norse mythology because it's a spoken meme that predates the Book of Genesis. The Book of Genesis was at first spoken and then it was written down. And Norse mythology comes from like it's Germanic, right? And
Hmm.
it's spread through the Nordic countries up to Iceland, and they carry this crazy story of the the Norse and the different gods and
The
the
runes.
lands and Asgard and Valhalla.
Hmm.
And the Vikings were really good at populating it because they're really good at like exploring. So the Norse mythology kind of like predates a lot of Western culture today, where they subliminally. So it's actually a really old meme, and I recognize that. And also like the Marvel comics and you know Thor and blah blah blah. I was like, man, that's such an obvious play to make because you've got this rich mimetic base to build upon to create this cult. And it's just coincidental that my last name has Thor in it.
That was going to be my
Um,
next question. Did you? Is that your actual last name?
Thor, yeah, yeah, yeah. And so
Okay.
um, it's like obvious to me because I'd done as part of my discovering my own name, I'd like deeply discovered Norse mythology to try and understand it. And I realized that this is such a cool meme. Why isn't anyone else using it? So Thor blocks, and then we switched to ThorChain after I bought the ThorChain.com domain from some snow chain supplier in Alaska, and for like 2.5 grand back in 2018. And then rest is history.
Very cool.
And it's interesting. A lot of people in the 2019-2020 cycle were trying to campaign to change the brand. They're like, it's the worst brand. It's so bad. It's so cringe worthy. Like, who names a blockchain after like a Norse
Norse
god?
mythology. And you took offense, obviously, without saying that you took offense.
Well, I was always saying it's such an obvious play, guys, because it's what are you going to rename it to? And they were like come up with weird, stupid names that just like completely vanilla, no mimetic power, just like completely brand new made names. And I'm like, nah, like the fact that we are even having this discussion that you find it cringeworthy is itself marketing itself. So
Right.
anyway, in
But at
the
that
end,
point, what were you? Like, who were you within the community? Because
so I
you
decided
were
to
undoxed, right?
no, I was yeah, non pseudo non. I was a avatar called Lina 156, and she was AI generated,
Okay.
and I AI generated her to be like this kind of like softly spoken, super chilled intern because I wanted people to underestimate me and just
Hmm.
kind of like just float over me. I didn't want to be intimidating to anyone. I wanted to be like just the intern, but it's just like who's this intern? And I wanted to win with the power of just the idea. And so I ran the ThorChain Twitter account, I ran all the socials, and I ran the Discords and the Telegram groups behind this identity called Lina. And yeah, she was always underestimated, but her ideas were powerful, and the ideas won.
Okay. And how long did you carry the Lena line for?
Till about 6 months ago, March this year, um,
What
Lena
happened?
was Lena was gonna R.I.P. Lena R.I.P. She was gonna die and be retired at the point of planned obsolescence. So planned obsolescence was the point at which we could hand over the protocol to a new community oriented team. So that was the whole idea. 3 years prior, we created this notion called planned obsolescence, where the
Hmm.
original team, and there's only 5 of us, believe it or not, 5 of us who built ThorChain, we're going to like delete and exit stage left and hand over to the community. And as a proof of our decentralization, we would do planned obsolescence. Like we wanted to like give the world this protocol and let it run by itself. And that was the ultimate test. And the moment that we could do planned obsolescence was the proof of decentralization that we always handed over. Because I
Hmm.
knew what we were building was going to be crazy if it worked and we solved all the problems. And I knew we had to make it decentralized. And it wasn't going to work if there was um, any
Hiccups.
doubt as to the credibility of its decentralization. So yeah, planned obsolescence was complete earlier this year. Hand over governance, treasury, socials, everything, and I was able to go. I was actually complete last year, but then earlier this year I was like, you know what, it's time to go all in and take ThorChain on the next 5 years and campaign to grow ThorChain. That's where we're at today.
Okay. And then what happened with Lena slash you?
So, Doc came out.
How did it happen?
much to the much to the dismay of. Oh, I announced it on a Twitter space with Maya
Ah,
Protocol, one of
okay.
our friendly folks. I just jumped on
So
and
it was
said, "Hey, I'm
intentional.
Lina." Yeah, yeah, yeah.
What
No,
an
I did it.
anticlimax.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. Anyway, but I mean, the whole point was just to to prove that it was decentralized. But forget about Lina. It's like it's more about the idea, and it's pretty epic to get to this point where a meme that did not exist. With ThorChain's a meme, right?
Well,
Like,
so just for like any of our listeners who are not familiar with ThorChain, could you like set the scene a little bit, like explain the product, the memology, the dApps, like the key dApps that are built on the chain, and I guess at the next stage we'll talk about your plans for the future.
yeah. So ThorChain allows you to swap Bitcoin to ETH in your wallet. Simple as that. And it's got almost $1 billion in security and liquidity, and it's done 120 billion in lifetime volume from millions of swappers. It's integrated in dozens of wallets, including some pretty high profile ones like Ledger, Trust Wallet, OKX Wallet. And it's this decentralized liquidity rails for the wider ecosystem. Anyone can tap into it. If anyone wants to swap Bitcoin ETH, send a Bitcoin transaction to a certain vault and it will swap for you. Done. And the main, I mean, over the years, we've tried really hard to just grow security, liquidity, and volume in those kind of like three. That's always the pillars: security, liquidity, volume, and you just kind of circle around and solve them all. 2025 will be about solving liquidity. We want more liquidity to the protocol. Anyway, so the main feature is just swaps, but also in 2025 we're building out a app layer. The past 3 years we have built apps on the base layer, like a savings app and a lending app, etc. But we realized that because anything we build on the base layer is like really plumbed into critical code, like it's like one line of code away from touching like core vault management. So we realized that actually, you know what we need? We need to separate out the DeFi apps from the base layer. The base layer should just be vault management, liquidity, streaming swaps done.
Mm-hmm.
And what we can build on top of it is more expressive DeFi, more risky, but also more modular. And so that's the focus next year is to launch this app layer with a whole bunch of typical DeFi apps that you might expect.
Okay, what's Acell?
So Acell is this idea that for the last billion years, since the primordial protein
Just a
soup,
billion? Yeah.
yeah, the machines have been, which is the machines of humanity from the self-replicating RNA, DNA, single-celled organisms, multi-celled organisms, the fish, reptiles, mammals, to where we are today. We have been doing nothing but observing the universe, learning from it, and passing that information forward. All right. And so if you break down what our purpose as a machine of the universe that can exhibit agency and manifest intelligence in the face of chaos is to look forward, learn, and replicate and propagate useful information.
Mm-hmm.
And useful information about how to survive the universe is captured in genes. So it's useful that we walk around on two legs and have two eyes and have eyebrows to keep the sweat off our eyes. So that's useful information to survive the universe that's replicated and propagated. And there's also pretty useful that we know that F equals ma and E equals mc squared, but that's memetic information. That's non-genetic information. And our purpose is to create a more advanced evolution of humanity itself, of the machines, the intelligent machines.
Mm-hmm.
But soon that's going to include the silicon machines. And the silicon machines, we're going to give a giant memetic repository, just like when you were born, you were given a giant genetic repository, which contained a whole set of useful instructions to how to be you.
Survive in
All
this
right,
world. Mm-hmm.
you're correct. And it's just so happened. So it's a genetic cheat code to get to where you are, but you've had to do so much extra stuff in the last 3 decades, 4 decades maybe, to learn all this memetic information around you, even like how to speak and how to articulate, and even the fact that I'm talking to you on a laptop connected to an internet. This is all just powered by memes. And so humanity is facing a reckoning in the next 100 to 200 years, maybe faster, where he, our understanding of humanity is we are the apex of intelligence, Homo sapiens.
Mm-hmm.
But we're going to face a day of reckoning where the silicon machines that we will create and give an advanced memetic repository will have far greater intelligence and agency than us. Agency is the ability to move around the universe, you know, digitally, physically, whatever agency you may want to dream up, whatever dimension. And these machines, they can like move at the speed of light, think at the speed of light, talk at the speed of light. They can withstand a much greater temperature range. They can see a much greater bandwidth of the EMF spectrum. They can look further. They can look smaller. They have far greater precision on the universe, so they can observe so much more about it, and they can think way much more. We're about to just give them a giant mimetic repository of
Data repository.
intelligence that will go to zero. Anyway, so getting
So
back to the question,
so
what's
Acell
Acell?
is to yeah, okay.
Yeah,
I guess
sorry.
it's to
Well, you
hone
tell me
in
what
on
Acell is.
well, I don't know. I'm guessing that it's to kind of like hone in on what that repository is going to look like and make sure that it's one that's going to be in our benefit and not to our detriment.
Yeah, I mean, to answer very simply, I should have said this 2 minutes ago. You're either accelerating or you're decelerating. So you're
Okay.
either moving forward like Mario, be like Mario. You stop moving, you're dead, or you're stagnating and you're slowing back. And it's not binary. It's a continuum. So every day you're either accelerating progress, accelerating the evolution of humanity and ability to withstand the adversity of the universe, or you're decelerating and you're slowing down everyone around you and you're captured by fear
You're
and
running
you're
to your
captured by
death.
stasis. So it's this mental model to look forward, build forward, instead of being fixated on the past or fixated on fear or fixated on losing things that you are not actually valuable.
But practically speaking, what is it?
It's just an optimistic outlook to how to go about your day-to-day life and
Okay.
build.
It seems very Elon-esque.
Well, yeah, actually, Elon's the chief accelerationist. Um, everything's doing is true ASO. He's trying to. A lot
So
of
it's a
humanity
movement.
is, a lot of humanity is
Okay.
captured in division and fear and uncertainty and being useless. And he's trying to say, look, stop being so scared, stop being so divided, and stop being so useless. Just do things that are
Just figure
useful.
out. Yeah. Okay, good. How do I sign up for ASO?
It's a
It's a
mental,
mindset. All right.
it's a
Okay.
mindset. Yeah,
I just signed up. Awesome.
you did.
Okay, very cool. So we touched on your background. We touched on ThorChain. As far as like your future aspirations for ThorChain, I know that you guys are like buying up lots and lots of relics of the Cosmos industry, Kojira, Levana, a whole bunch of other ones that I'm less familiar with. What's your game plan there?
Yeah, so I recognize that there's a lot of distressed DeFi teams that needs
Mm-hmm.
consolidation, and ThorChain has built an incredible strong base, and it's ready to be built on. And my view of the world is, and if you do disagree with me, go ahead and build something different. But my view of the future 5 years and what that means for self custody and decentralized liquidity is this kind of like stack, this cohesive stack where you have self custody, multi chain, safe self custody at the top, and then you've got this DeFi layer in the middle from interfaces to aggregators to DeFi apps, and then finally at the protocol layer. So we've kind of built ThorChain at the protocol layer. It's ready to
Mm-hmm.
scale, and now I'm building on top of it to drive value up and down the stack. So rather than building from scratch and getting used from scratch, uh, we raised a bunch of money and capital to swallow up some distressed teams. So we've made a bunch of acquisitions in the last 6 months, 3 months. Kajira, Thor Wallet, Broker, the Kajira ecosystem, Levana, soon to be announced, Terra Station Wallet. And we're going to bring
Very
them all
cool.
together and build a cohesive interface. But it's really actually important that although I am building stuff that's going to be great user experience for users, I'm actually building infrastructure not for humans, but for the bots. Well, for the humans to work with the bots on. Right?
Okay.
But more importantly, bots. There's
Explain.
going to be a billion bots on chain before a billion humans, right? And it's really important, one, that bots are as can access really low latency, high bandwidth money that they can move around very quickly,
Hmm.
because the machines are going to want to purchase the time and effort of the other machines to get stuff done. I mean, that's the whole agentic idea, is that, rather than having one giant AGI is actually going to be a million little bots, right? Each with like highly specialized LLMs, language models or whatever, all being agents to each other. And so the AGI is the sum of them all, right? So AGI is not this giant math like, mental model, or this giant supercomputer that sits in a somewhere in Texas or whatever, controlling the world. It's actually a billion bots, highly specialized, all paying each other little bits of money to orient themselves towards a goal. And very Skynetty, but
No, I
that's
love
what's going
it.
to happen. And so I want to see it happen, right? Because if I try and build ahead, then I'm not going to get stuck behind. And if you get stuck behind, you're going to be zombified and become unconscious, as these bots are going to steal all your time and effort by feeding you an infinite content machine and you're not even going to prompt it. They can like read your heart rate, your pulse, look at your eye tracking, and give you this infinite content machine to suck out all your time and effort, and to steal what you don't have, right? To steal everything you have, right?
And do it
And give us
better.
the boss. Right?
Yeah.
So I'm going to try and stay ahead of that. I don't want to be zombified, and I'm going to build infrastructure the bots will find useful, right? And because they find it useful, we're going to be best buddies. They will like me. Yeah.
so
So, so
you're
part of the stuff the
building
bots need.
building ThorChain for the future, for being sustainable in an environment that you're anticipating is just around the corner. I saw you tweeted yesterday, I think it was yesterday, how you never thought that they would come where you would rely more heavily on AI than you would on Google.
Correct.
But
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
when I read that, I realized like, oh shit, like I'm doing the same exact thing. Like I used to Google used to be my go-to research tool, and now I don't even look at Google. Like I do everything in ChatGPT and other LLMs. And that's even I haven't even been using those for more than a year now. Like who knows it's going to be in 5 or 10 years from now.
A giant churn's coming, which is going to get accelerate. But I realize yeah, and everything is nothing sacred. Everything's up for grabs. And if you
And
ever
ThorChain's
thought,
grabbing at it.
yeah, I mean, honestly, if we stagnate, then we're up for grabs as well. Nothing,
You're frozen.
even Lindy kind of runs out of steam when it comes to giant upheavals like this. Bitcoin, however, will be the predominant currency that the bots will use, because the bots
Why is
are
that?
only interested in purchasing the time and effort of the machines around them, biological or silicon. And so you got to understand that time multiplied by effort is work. It's a delta entropy change of the universe. So if you change the entropy of the universe is always increasing, but we get to increase it by me moving my hands around, increase the entropy of the universe. Me building ThorChain, increase the entropy of the universe. We can do it. So it's being able to prove that we did something on the universe, something useful, as determined by the market, is its sale value. And we're going to sell our useful delta entropy into a neutral delta entropy, which we then sell to the bots, right? It's our common medium of exchange is actually just delta entropy. And so what is the closest proxy of delta entropy? It is proof of work, Bitcoin. Bitcoin, right? It's not perfect, but because of the change of hash and various other things,
Mm-hmm.
but it proves that each unit of currency is either bought on market for a fair price, or because of its unforgeable costliness, each unit that was mined at the time that it was mined, the delta entropy required was a known-ish quantity. And you could say that the United States dollar is a proxy for the delta entropy that the US and all its proxies have affected on the global economic growth, right? The global change of entropy that the world has conducted. And the United States dollar controls the output of 300 million American units of labor and all the machines that they can drive around. and all the weaponry they can steer around the sky and the land and the sea. So that's why the United States dollar has purchasing power, even though it's a paper currency, is because it controls the delta entropy of 300 million units of labor force of the Americans. And so then you think about what the bots will use, and there's going to be a billion bots plus. They will use something that's censorship resistant because they're going to get censored pretty quickly. That is has a large hash horizon.
But that could be any cryptocurrency. Why Bitcoin specifically?
Bitcoin is the only currency emitted through proof of work, and there can only be one proof of work currency. It will all gravitate into one proof of work, and it'll actually Bitcoin's 10-minute block times, its hash horizon, will allow a very large hash center to be pseudo located with the Earth. So as the bots are like orbiting around Earth and Mars is slightly outside our hash horizon, interestingly. So it's actually the most useful currency in the largest continuum of space,
Wow.
right? That we can also participate in. And so the bots are going to choose to use Bitcoin for this while. Now, if the hash center of Bitcoin moves from Earth to, say, Mars, then we're going to need to come up with like quantum entanglement or something to keep the ledgers perfectly in sync so that even though the hash center is moving away from Earth, we still have a perfectly synced ledger on Earth, which is theoretically possible. Or the bots will have to fork Bitcoin off and take it into the universe.
Create a
Who
Mars
knows?
version. Wow. I've never thought quite that far, but that's brilliant. The first thing I'm gonna do after this is go and buy some more Bitcoin. But not financial advice. I forgot that we're being recorded. Not financial advice. Nothing here that you hear is financial or legal advice, and obviously do your own research. Very cool. I wanted to ask you about like one other thing that's not related, but we had like a pretty engaging conversation around Israel and its geopolitical significance. You had a really cool thesis that I'd never heard before, but I'd appreciate if you could repeat it now that we're recording, because I'd love to share it with some other people.
Yeah, absolutely. So I traveled to Jerusalem 18 months ago, and something that struck me, it's a very beautiful place, the holy city of Jerusalem. You've got the four quadrants, the major world religions are all kind of centered there. You've got, the West Wall, the mosque, you've got the birthplace of Christ, you've got the death place of Christ. So it's an amazing, amazing place. Everyone should go visit the old city of Jerusalem. But something that made me realize is
Not
that
travel advice, but yeah.
at the moment,
We
unfortunately,
need this. We need all the disclaimers we can get. Yeah, go ahead.
not at the
But
moment,
everyone should come and visit.
in the few years. And I realized that the reason why, perhaps one of the reasons why most of modern humanity's mimetic base is originates from that area is purely because, and it might not be as simple as this, but because where Israel is, it kind of is the eastern side of a very calm sea, and you've got Egypt to the south, and you've got Greece up to the north, and you've got these kind of hills up into Palestine and towards the east there. And as the air moves over the ocean and up against those hills, it creates very arable land, so like farms and whatnot. And because it's very stable, there's no crazy volcanoes or typhoons or cyclones zeroing out, the villages every 200 years. Something like on the islands of Fiji, they kind of got zeroed out every 200 years from typhoons and cyclones. No one could write stuff down, and there was no half life. The half life was really short because of the the geographical area,
Yeah.
geological area. Whereas Israel and like from Egypt, Israel up to Greece, very stable, flat sea, perfect for trade. Jump on your canoe. So the speed rate of growth of the mimetic the meta replication was much higher in that region. You could write stuff down on papyrus that you pulled out of the Nile River, which you bought off a boat, which was then, and you could sell, your olives up into Greece, and it was like a center for trade, and therefore mimetic replication propagation. And so the people there started writing things down first. Those things, they created libraries, they traded with each other, they created money, they created systems of trade and systems of language and systems of measuring things. That's where and all that information was able to be stored and passed on without being zeroed out every 200 years. And so all of most of our like our language, our math, our philosophy, our religion, our music, etc., originates from that very rich area. But if you compare with Australia or like Pacific Ocean or South America, North America, or Canada, up those areas, there's too much instability. There's like volcanoes, typhoons, crazy stuff going on, and not enough richness of trade and people working together. So my theory is, and this is my own theory that I've kind of like thought about, is it's just the geological area and the stability allowed the memes to have a long half life and propagate. And those memes coming out of the area, because they were well uh, basic, they had like a good standing and could grow. They beat everyone else's memes, and so that's why the modern humanity has so much to thank for and originates from that area.
So we should rename Israel Meme Land.
The birthplace and the
It could
deathplace
work.
of the memes.
It could work. Cool. Okay, moving on to Explorer. I know that you have like all these like cool expeditions that you've taken on with choppers, like flying over difficult regions. Tell me a little bit about that whole side of you.
Yeah, so I love exploring, and apart from flying around the world a bunch of times in the Air Force, which gave me kind of like the knowledge to do this kind of stuff. 2 years ago, I grabbed a helicopter out of England and I flew it England, France, Egypt. Sorry, England, France, Greece, Italy, Greece, Cyprus, Egypt, Saudi, Bahrain,
What?
Oman, Pakistan, India,
Same
Bangladesh,
chopper,
Myanmar. Yeah, same
straight
job.
trip. I mean, not straight. Obviously, you stopped on
Oh,
the
it
way.
took like 6 weeks. Got locked up in Myanmar for
Wow.
24 hours. Escaped into Laos, Malaysia, Thailand, Singapore.
How does that
Anyway,
work? Flying a helicopter like from one country to another. Like you have to land in airports. Like what is that? Or is it
yeah, you
just
just
off
landed.
grid
I
track?
kind of like in 2021 cycle, I finally took a year off. Had a
Hmm.
bit of liquidity from the bull market top, so I bought a helicopter, and I read this book from Dick Smith, and he was talking about 30 years ago. Dick Smith, the famous Australian entrepreneur, picked up a helicopter in Texas and flew around the world, Texas, Texas. And I'm like, man, if he can do it, I can do it. So yeah, I did. But a modern helicopter, much safe, much easier, aircon.
Wait. So what? And what was your last trip? Like it was from England, and you ended up in.
England to Australia, and then I went Australia up to Tokyo, flew around Mount Fuji, and back to Australia again, and then went Australia down to New Zealand, flew around New Zealand,
Wow,
and back again. And then
so
earlier this year, I
cool.
took it to Singapore Air Show. It's good fun.
Yeah, that's awesome. Very cool.
But seeing the
Okay.
world from five, like below 10,000, if you're at like flight level 350 and you got air hosties and
Yeah,
whatever,
how high can you
you just
go up in a helicopter?
I've taken up to 12,000 feet,
Oh wow.
um, but more typically 4,000 to 8,000 feet. Sometimes, most of the times lower. But you see everything. You see the villages. You see the kids running around the paddocks. You see the farmers toiling in the rice fields. You see the monkeys jumping off the trees and in
So
like
cool. How
yeah,
often do you have to refuel? Like how many hours of flight time do you get?
every 4 to 5 hours refuel and land at an airport and keep going. Good fun. In 2 years' time, I'm going to fly the chopper around the world, but via the poles. So I think the plan will be Australia, New Zealand, South Pole, Drake Passage up through South America, North America, North Pole, and then back through Norway and back through Russia
S-
and over
Awesome.
us.
Do
Yeah.
you do it? Are you on your own? Like you fly by yourself?
Fly with a buddy. Yeah. There's a lot of hours flying, especially over water.
Wow.
I've done 6 hours over water
So you guys are
from,
good mates if you're spending that much time together.
yeah, exactly.
Very cool. All right. Well, if you fly via Jerusalem, pick me up for a few hours.
I have flown a helicopter around Jerusalem
Have
when I
you?
was there 2 years ago. Yeah, I flew Tel, Tel Aviv, near, kind of little civilian airfield there. We flew up over Jerusalem, down the sea,
Like Herzliya Coast?
down the coast. Checked out that crazy um, top where the Romans were sieging building a wall up to, I can't remember, you would know the name,
Yeah.
but this is
What?
like
Roshan Ikra? Akko?
thousands of years ago.
Yeah.
The Romans were trying to attack a small Muslim village or something at the top of a
Yeah, yeah, I
mountain,
know what you're talking about.
and they were there for like 3 years, right?
Apollonia.
Yeah, and the Romans finally they built a wall up this crazy cliff, and finally got up there, and everyone suicided or died.
Oh, Masada. Okay, yeah, very cool. Wow. All right, man. Awesome. This has been fantastic. Thank you so much for your time. If there are listeners who want to get involved in like the Thor community, like what's the best way for them to do that? How could they find out more about Thor, and how could they find out more about you and get involved with some of your content?
Yeah, sure. Jump on Twitter, follow JP Thor, get in the ThorChain community. So hopefully over the next 5 years, you will use ThorChain and not even realize it. That's the point.
Amen.
Is it's a protocol? It's a money protocol. It's going to disappear away. And honestly, in 5 years, there will be more bots using ThorChain than humans anyway. So be it. That's fine. Give the
All
bots
right.
what they want.
Cool. And you can also check out jpthor.com if you want to just find out more about JP's really cool personality. If there's anything that we didn't cover on this show. Thank you, JP.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to Beyond the Code. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe, share with your friends, and to tune in again next week for more fun and insightful conversation.